Our fall from grace. We've touched on what seems like an inherent part of our existence, feeling alone and isolated. But what does it mean to be existentially alone? It means that this aloneness exists simply because you exist. You exist as a distinction that is set off from all that it's not, which is what makes the self a discrete entity. And this creates a core sense of being separate and isolated. Because this self, which is primarily identified as an inner self awareness, is conceptual in nature and lacks any objective solidity, your sense of disconnection from reality is enhanced. You tend to overlook the source of this universal human condition and suffer as if it's an undeserved affliction that perhaps you alone endure. Since we seem to live within our own private inner worlds, a sense of isolation is to be expected. From time to time, we may share our experiences with others and value their company, but some deep aspect of our being never seems to be touched by them, or rarely in any case. We've already discussed the origins of this condition. Among other contributors, our sense of disconnection is created by our lack of direct personal experience when it comes to the nature of our own existence. One thing everyone fails to grasp, however, is that our very self-experience is created by making the distinction of self and not self. You creates not you creates you. Remember, the inside and outside of a circle are created in the same moment. If the circle isn't drawn, there is no inside or outside, and so no separation. It is the same with you. Don't create a distinction between you and not you, and there is no you, and no separation. This might be better understood through the use of the Lucifer myth. A myth of long ago tells us of a fallen angel, Lucifer, whose statement to God went something like, "I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven." My understanding of this myth is that Lucifer is the self, that it points to an illusion within, an activity to which our original being falls prey, separating us from what's real and true. The hell in which we rule is our own self-mind. The heaven we refuse to serve is the real nature of being, the absolute truth. It is within our own self-mind that we seem to have free rein. Here we can adulterate or distort whatever we wish. We can choose what to accept and what to reject, what to believe and what to disbelieve. It is within our own minds that we can lie, pretend, misrepresent, ignore, imagine, and more. It is here that we have our opinions and pass our judgments. We can reorient data, rearrange facts, and disregard the truth if we so desire. We can alter our perceptions and recreate our memories. It is here that we reside as a self-overlord. This is where it appears as though we rule. We can do all this, but we can't create a sense of being connected. Our rule requires a separation between what we experience in our own self-mind or cognizant awareness and our experience of others and reality, as well as a separation between us and the absolute truth. Although we seem to be the self-overlord, in truth we suffer the consequences of this illusion, and so our little fiefdom also becomes our prison. We spend our time serving false masters and struggling against meaningless foes. This is the world of the self. On the other hand, if we were not dominated by ignorance of any kind, and did not identify with the distinction of a separate self, then we would have no choice but to succumb to an experience of being at one with truth and reality. Without self, there is no separation. Regardless of how this illusion of self-rule came to pass or what we may be able to do about it, the fact remains that currently we find ourselves within an awareness that is separate and introverted. At our core, we suffer a sense of existential aloneness and experience that we are separate and alone simply in the act of existing. This is a result of experiencing ourselves as a separate self-awareness, and this awareness is by definition isolated. Connected or not connected, this is the one that will die. Assumptions may be conceptual, but simply because something is a concept doesn't mean it is without power. Our core concepts have great power and influence on our lives. They can very easily be perceived as real and solid aspects of life. All of these self and life experiences are rooted in the conceptual domain. Yet, their force in our lives is undeniable. They simply aren't real or necessary, and they aren't etched in stone. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Hui wu hui. Proof of our own existence? Everyone has heard the phrase from Descartes, cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am. The most common interpretation is that it asserts beingness, the proof of which is our thinking. If I think, I must exist. And yet few people have any idea what it took Descartes to arrive at such a simple statement. Perhaps a quick look might be useful. His work in this area is related to doubt. He began a practice of doubting and doubting everything. But being unable to doubt the very act of doubting revealed something beyond doubt. In such a realization, one becomes aware of the existence of the source condition that is doing the negating or doubting. In other words, the first thing is always what is occurring as itself. It is simply what is. An assessment or action is always secondary. A thought of an apple is not an apple, but it is a thought. What's most intriguing about this subject, however, is the speed at which people grab onto a statement that is rarely understood but seems to confirm one's existence. Why do you think we adopt and assert such a thing so readily? I think, therefore I am. It is frequently said with a certain degree of pride in the background, right next to the doubt that presses such an assertion to the fore. Could it be that we aren't so certain? Yes, it could. We're not certain. Strange thing to say, isn't it? But the true, nevertheless. I think, therefore I am. Why do we feel so drawn to such a statement? Why is it so well known and popular? Could it be because it is one of the few assertions that flat out suggests proof of our own existence? For most of us, it is completely superficial and in no way suggests a direct experience or insight. Yet, it still seems to validate the fact that we must exist, that we are real. After all, we do think. Is this proof that we indeed exist? What a close one. We were almost caught doubting whether we are real or not. The depth of our self-doubt is not something fully acknowledged. All sorts of beliefs can divert us from such a discomforting and unconventional notion. Yet somewhere deep inside and rarely visited, we doubt ourselves. At some point, everyone confesses some sense of inauthenticity and ignorance. After all, for all you know, you may be the only one that doesn't really know who you are or what life is all about. This generates a feeling of insecurity and uncertainty. Riding on the crest of this doubt are tendencies to pretend, misrepresent, embellish, fake, believe, and so on, no matter how sophisticated is their presentation. In simple terms, we doubt that what we experience as ourselves is genuine or real. No one was given the authoritative manual regarding life and how to live it. We are personally quite blank on that important subject. We may have learned a great deal and have adopted many beliefs and viewpoints, but this does not diminish our ability to notice that originally and fundamentally we are ignorant. and that everything currently getting us through life began as external to us. This isn't a very comforting observation. It suggests that we don't inherently have what it takes to handle the tasks of life or to know what life is all about. We seem to have to get these crucial skills and knowledge elsewhere. They don't come with the package at birth.